Yeah. Do you wish that your family had been less supportive of you going into cheese?
No, I think that they were just the right amount of supportive but critical. I think I needed a little bit of like, "Are you sure you want this?"
Yeah.
To some degree, because it was a really quite a big life switch.
Yeah.
I'd wanted to be a doctor since I was like 8.
That's what field was it going to be? What part?
Trauma surgery
Wow.
was my preferred track since I was like maybe 12. Up until I was like 21 when I decided I was going to go into cheese.
Are your parents in medicine?
My mom is a nurse. She's a at-home wound care specialist. So she does like home health care for people who have like particularly bad wounds.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I grew up with that my whole life. My dad is a custom upholsterer, so he makes furniture, so very, very different.
Yeah. Man, that's wild. Yeah. And how did they feel when you were since 12 saying you wanted to be a doctor?
Oh, they were like so proud. They were always like, doctors, lawyers, engineers, this is great. My brother was like, I'm going to be an engineer. I was like, I'm going to be a doctor. They were like, this is the best thing ever. They're like, this is the American dream, baby. We live a nice life. We have a house. Our kids are going to become engineers and doctors. My brother is an engineer, though, so thank God someone stuck with the plan.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, I mean, we've got our first. He's 4 months, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I don't know. What do I, like, you know, I keep a journal, so every now and again I write to him and I record like podcasts to him.
Aww.
I'm thinking, you know, when he's like 30, maybe I'll give, you know, he'll get those. And so I'm like writing them. I'm thinking to myself, do I want to tell him to like chase his dreams and, you know, go after, you know, do whatever you want, take risks, or do I want to tell him, go get a secure job?
Go be safe. I think my parents did a nice mix of both. Of like, they wanted me. My mom has wanted to be a nurse her entire life. Like, she came out the womb wanting to be a nurse, and she was always like a big workaholic, big like loves what she does. And so like I got to grow up seeing that, and I just think my parents pushed this idea of like, you are great at so many things, and you could be great at so many things. Your choice is what you want to be great at. And like obviously they fostered. I mean, my brother and I were both just like very good in school, like annoyingly smart little children. I can't even imagine how annoying we were when we were young. And so I'm sure for them, they were just like, oh, great. This is what they're good at. This is what they love. We'll foster this.
Yeah.
I don't think they were really expecting me to come back from like the top SUNY school and be like, I'm going to be a cheesemonger. I think that was like probably the biggest switch I could have given them.
I've heard the story because, you know, you told it on Steven's podcast, but you were in college for pre-med, right?
Yeah,
Or whatever it was. And you joined a cheese club and fell in love with cheese.
Yeah, that's the gist of the story. There was a cheese club, or there was a group of students who were like, let's start a cheese club. And I was like, hey, can I help you do that? And they were like, sure, I guess. And I kind of became like I actually became the first official president of the club once we were officially a club on campus. And now it's like one of the largest clubs on Binghamton's campus. Binghamton is actually, the Binghamton Cheese Club is paying for me to come down later this month to give a talk to the Binghamton Cheese Club.
That's awesome.
So it's pretty wild.
Yeah. Were you into cheese prior to the club?
I mean, I grew up in a really like Italian American household. Like I grew up in Queens, so like I just had that like love of like cheese and cured meats generally. Like it was like just a part of our lives, was like there was always like cheese around and things like that. My mom always cites this one story from when I was like 5. She had like a hunk of Taleggio in the fridge, which is pretty stinky, like not a normal 5-year-old cheese. And I ate the whole chunk. And she was like caught between like being really proud of me because like how great her 5-year-old has like such an expanded palate, and also being like furious with the fact that I like ate all of her like expensive cheese. And so she cites that as like, she's like, I should have known then. Should have known that you'd end up in cheese. And I was like, that does not seem like enough of information.
Yeah.
But then I've always been like fascinated with food. Like I've always been in a big like cooking household. Like food and sitting down for dinner was always a big part of our lives.
Yeah.
Like we eat dinner at 5:30 every night my whole childhood. Like until I went off to college. And even then when I go home to visit, like we're still eating dinner at 5:30 at night.
That's wild.
Except for Sundays. We eat at like 4:30 on Sundays.
Okay.
Big pot of sauce.
Yeah. Yeah. So, what was it like to, you know, an Italian-American family, but what was it like to grow up in New York, in Queens, but in New York City?
It was awesome. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I like being in the middle of things.
Okay.
I'm just a person that likes to be like surrounded by a lot of people as an extrovert.
Yeah.
I just like loved it. I also like the access to things. That was kind of the why we opened the Curd Nerd, was because moving up here, I felt like I lost a lot of access to things that I had unequivocal access to in Queens. Like the constant, like the regular grocery stores have like a little old Italian man behind the counter, like, oh, we just got in a wheel of parm. Hold on. Like, it's very different, the like mentality around food and small food, I think, in a lot of ways. I mean, I think Syracuse definitely has like a food scene, obviously, but it's so different. Like,
Yeah.
my butcher at home still like asks about me every week, and like when I go home to visit, they're like, oh, Sarah's home. They're like, what can we pack for you? They were like, do you want us to cryovac you something so you could bring it back up there? Like my mom showing them pictures of things I'm doing. They're like the bakery owner knows us all. Like it's just
That's
a little
wild.
different. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we can get some of that around here, but not much. You'd think Syracuse would have more of that.
That's kind of, especially with the like Italian
Yeah.
influence of Syracuse, you would think we'd have so much more of it. I mean, we obviously have like pockets of it, but it's not quite in the same capacity. Like I have like butchers on butchers on butchers and bakeries on bakeries on bakeries and places to buy cheese and all of that at home. Like, you know, we go to one butcher if we're getting Italian meats. We go to this other one if we want to get lamb because they're a better Greek butcher. Like, and we don't have that kind of like
Right.
competition and like camaraderie amongst those businesses here so much. Like even if I went into my butcher at home and was like, hey, I'm looking to get a whole lamb for Greek Easter. I'm not Greek, but it is possible. They'd be like, oh, go to my friend. He's at this butcher. He will get you a whole lamb.
Yeah.
We don't have that kind of like, oh, there's this other.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, there's just not enough competition like between.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. I wonder if that's why, if that's what it is. I mean, there is like the bakeries. There is a little bit, not as much, but
I think they all have their own niche though. Like,
Yeah.
they all do their own like special thing
Yeah.
that makes them different.
yes. I mean, I'm trying to think of where all the bakeries are laid out. I mean, you've got Dolores and Columbus that are pretty close to each other. I'm trying to think what else is over there. Dolores. I think that's
There's not
it.
a ton.
Where's
In
Nino's?
in the neighborhood I grew up in, there was 5 bakeries within like a mile and a half of each other. So like about as close as you could possibly get.
Yeah.
And we went to them all for very different things. Like there's one bakery right in town near my church. We'd stop every Sunday after church to pick up like danishes and stuff to go home. There's another one that makes the best Italian cookies, so we'd go there for Christmas. The other one is better at cakes and pastries. That's like birthday party bakery. Like if you live in a neighborhood here, it's not like within a mile and a half you could hit
All right.
5 of anything.
No.
I mean maybe 5 Wegmans, but
Yeah.
that's about it.
Yeah. No, it really doesn't. It's not a thing. I've thought about that a lot with delis around here because we don't really have like there is Lombardi's and there is Vince's, but and I do prefer Lombardi's to Vince's.
I do as well.
But
Love them
there's-
both for different reasons.
Yeah.
But I'm also just closer to the Lombardi's.
Yeah.
Slightly partial.
And that's kind of more like old world a little bit, you know. I mean,
Yes. Oh,
you
yeah.
know, that's got to remind you of New York.
When
a
I
touch.
moved here and found Lombardi's, I was like,
Yeah.
thank God. Because it's like truly one of those things where it's like I missed that and I missed the like walking into a place like that and knowing like someone in the back was making pasta to like put on the
Right.
shelves. But it's really just the one location.
Yeah.
That's like the only place that I really get that
All right.
feel. I mean,
Oh,
Vince's
yeah,
is
sure.
nice, but it feels more like new,
Yeah.
newer. Obviously,
Right.
it is than
Yeah.
comparatively to Lombardi's, and so like I'm so used to that like much older feeling,
Right.
kind of deli bodega, someone
For sure.
like family of love kind of food.
But Vince's does have it's more of a commercialized thing,
Yeah.
which is great. It's still the same product. I think it's the same stuff, but still, you walk into Lombardi's and it's like, oh, you know, I'm home, sort of. So,
Yeah.
did you try? Like, I'm just curious. So, what was your progression of? You're at Binghamton and you're, you know, pre-med and you get into cheese and you become the president of this cheese club. Like, what happens next?
What happens next from there was I went home and I started working in Brooklyn at a cheese shop. I actually applied to every cheese shop, like from like the Bronx all the way out on Long Island.
Okay.
And I was like, I don't care. I will drive or take trains or however it is that I have to get there. I need to know if working in cheese like is
Worth it
for me before I like don't finish taking my pre-med classes. And so I went home and a cheese shop in Brooklyn reached out. I sent the email. They were like, hey, come in for an interview tomorrow. I called my cousin to be like, how do I get to this part of Williamsburg? Because he lived in Williamsburg. He told me the worst train route possible. I went through some of the scariest neighborhoods of New York City to get there. And I finally get there, get off the train, my cute little outfit after I went through all these terrifying neighborhoods to go to this Williamsburg cheese shop interview. The only interview question asked was, what is the cheese club? To which I answered, explained what I did as the president of the cheese club. And then she goes, okay, cool. Do you want to come in tomorrow to do a trail, which is essentially like staging in a kitchen? But just come in. Yeah, like check out, like walk around with the cheesemongers. They'll like see if you're worth it, if you mesh with the group, whatever. So I was like, great, I'll see you tomorrow. I went, I bought 3 bottles of wine, took the correct trains home because my cousin was not being helpful. And I got home and I was like, I have to go back tomorrow. And I sat there, figured out the best train route to actually get me there safely. Went in the next day, I trailed, my girlfriend picked me up. And then within an hour, I'd gotten a call from the owner that was like, we'd like you to start tomorrow.
Oh, that's cool.
And I sort of went full steam ahead, was working there constantly. Like any hours they could give me, I was like, I will work. I will clean shelves. I will pick up. I don't care. I want to work here so bad. And it was probably my first week there. My parents had come out to like pick me up from work and like check. My dad was like, I have to check out the neighborhood because he's like we're like generationally from Queens, so they remember Williamsburg like when it was like scary. And my grandfather was a Brooklyn North homicide detective, so like we know when Brooklyn was like really scary. And then my dad showed up and he was like, you could take all the trains you want. I don't care.
Yeah.
Get here however you want. You're totally safe now. Yeah. And I was like, this is all I want to do.
Huh. That's wild.
Yeah.
So did you complete at Binghamton? Did you finish, or did you pause before to go?
No, I finished my degree. I have a degree in cellular molecular biology. I just ended up tweaking the classes I was going to take to finish out my senior year from like pre-med courses to things that more had to do with microbiology. So I was focusing a little bit more on yeasts, molds, and bacteria, so that when I did start working in cheese, I could be like, I also have this like added knowledge.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Huh. All right. So how long were you at the shop in Brooklyn?
I worked there on and off for almost 2 years.
Okay.
And then that's about when my now husband was like, hey, I got a job in Syracuse. We should move. And I was like, oh, really? You sure? And he was like, I could buy you a house. And I said, okay, I'll go. I honestly, growing up in Queens, like that's like not even remotely possible. Like none of my friends own property down there. I mean, like they rent for like them and their partner might rent with another couple and all be in a 2-bedroom apartment. Like that would be like the max I was looking forward to. And Matt was kind of like, why would we have roommates when we could have a yard? And I was like, crazy idea.
That's wild. Yeah, my brother and his family live in Congers, and both my brothers went to Nyack College, and so it's wildly expensive. Yeah, wildly expensive. Yeah. I think his house is like, I don't know, $600,000, and here it'd be like 220. It's crazy.
No, 100%. Matt and I, our plot is bigger than my parents. Like you can fit my parents' whole house inside of mine.
Wow.
And their property is worth, I think it's almost 9 times what Matt and I paid for our property, which is so crazy to think about, because like my dad didn't even realize it at first. And then I was like asking to figure out something with our like plot lines and like where our fence is. And he was like looking at it and he's like, is that the dimensions of your plot? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, I'm a little upset right now. You guys own more property than we do. He's like, and I know you guys paid next to nothing for it. And I'm like, yeah. Yeah. Like, that's why we live up here. And now my parents are like, maybe we should move to Syracuse.
So when you two came up to Syracuse, were you thinking I'm going to open a cheese shop?
No. So actually, we moved in 2020. We bought our house January 2020. I was all set to leave in June of 2020 for a year-long European excursion. The entire plan was that Matt was going to move here, get settled in his job, start grad school. I was going to go to Europe for a year and then come back having like farm-handed essentially in Europe for cheese. And then from there, we were going to decide like what we wanted to do, if we wanted to like stay in Syracuse or if I wanted to like go into like traveling around for cheese and like whatever. So obviously that fell through. We ended up moving in April of 2020 is when we officially moved into our house. And it was like fairly clear at that point that I was not going to Europe. So I like canceled my tickets, all of that kind of good stuff. And then I was like, okay, well, since we're in central New York, there's a lot of cheese around here. I could probably work like essentially farmhanding here and seeing the cheese making aspect. Except because of the pandemic, most cheesemakers were not hiring. Like no one was actively hiring. Because they were like, look, we have kids and family and they're all unemployed right now. So we're just going to have them help us so that we could kind of keep a bubble. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
I was like, that's cool.
Yeah. That's wild. My brain doesn't work that way. Like, you're thinking of, I'm going to go spend a year in Europe learning about cheese. In my head, I'm like, what can Chat GPT tell me about cheese that I need to know?
I like, cheese is one of those things where actually I just read a whole article about Chat GPT and cheese. And it was essentially a cheese writer. It was on the Cheese Professor, if anyone wants to look it up. This cheese writer was asking Chat GPT about cheese and like seeing what it would say. And it was like talking about how is it going to affect the cheese industry if people are going to start asking Chat GPT things. And it became very clear that it's like using a very formulaic response and that it's also very like Eurocentric. So you're kind of lacking all of this cheese information that you could not get without a human. Because it is so focused on telling you like, France has brie. Italy has parm. Instead of being like, there's a huge cheese making culture in the South Americas and in America and in Canada and.
You're right. Yeah. Have you experimented with Chat GPT yet?
I have not. I'm actually kind of afraid of technology, which is funny because Matt's an engineer. I just like don't feel confident in it, so he kind of deals with like any technological things in our home, and I don't ask questions.
So I've been fascinated by it. I'm pulling it up right now. I've been absolutely fascinated by it because for somebody like myself, it can solve so many issues. Tell me about cheese. Let's just see what it says. Cheese is a dairy product. I've been fascinated by it, and I've been using it for so many things. I've been using it for yesterday. I was like struggling to come up with every caption I was writing for a client for a Facebook post. They were all dumb, and I was like, I'm just gonna have Chat GPT do it. So I pull up my phone. I need a witty Facebook post about enchiladas on a Monday. Bam, there it is. Copy, paste. It's done.
Oh, that's wild. You should not have told me that. You're going to see a lot of Chat GPT nerd captions out here soon.
So I use it for emails for our MailChimp account. When I'm emailing restaurant owners, I'm emailing our customers. I'm like, I need a sales email to go out about our sangria bar crawl. Here's the details. Bam. Gives me cute, very well-written, long...
You mean to tell me I'm out here writing the Nerd email that goes out every Friday for 4 hours, and I could just have the robot do it?
You could... I don't know who a famous cheesemonger is, but you could, or even a musician, a poet, an author, you could say, I need a sales email to go out about this new 15-year Parm wheel that we're bringing in, and it's going to be available. Here's the dates. Here's the price, da-da-da-da. And I need it in the voice of John Wayne. And it will write you that sales email in the voice of John Wayne.
I think that scares me, actually.
It's terrifying.
Yeah, there's something about that is, like, very unnerving to me. As it is, I don't even, like, we've got, like, a full Google house and shop pretty much. Just because, like, we have become so lazy.
Right.
In my home, we just, like, all the lights are automated and all that kind of stuff. And even then, sometimes it kind of freaks me out when I, like, say something and Google is like, oh, hello. Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. And I'm like, I was not even
Right.
talking to you.
Yeah.
Why are you listening
yes.
to me right now?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I was just like on the phone with my mom, like saying something, and Google is like, hi, I'm sorry. I can't seem to find it. And I'm like, oh no, you're listening.
Yeah. Oh, they're definitely listening. There's like the user. Yeah.
Yeah. Matt always laughs. I apologize to all the Googles and like say thank you and stuff. And he's like, Sarah, it's a robot. And I'm like, here's the thing. We no longer really know what that means.
Right.
And they're getting scarier and scarier by the day. So I'm going to keep apologizing and saying thank you and please when I can so that it doesn't kill me.
Google is not what you have to worry about. Now it's ChatGPT.
Yeah, I'm
like,
worried about all of them.
this version right now is phenomenal for so many things. And yeah, so I have it writing sales emails. We're doing cocktail videos now where I give it a list of all the ingredients and then it gives me a recipe.
Yeah, I saw one of those.
Yep. I have it now write my podcast descriptions. I hate writing the show notes. And
That's so crazy.
The show notes on every podcast is like, my guest this week is so-and-so from such and such. Here's their website. Here's our website. Goodbye. Now I'm like, I just had Adam from Old Home Distillers on.
Yeah.
So ChatGPT now, it has up-to-date information from summer of 2022 I think it's summer of 2022. So anything that's on the internet from summer of 2022, it's aware of. So I said, my guest on the podcast, can you write me a podcast description? My guest was Adam from Old Home Distillers. Here's information on the podcast, like about Eat Local New York. Can you include my thing? And then our sponsor for the podcast now is Brown Carbonic. That's all I said. Very short. I had a paragraph about Old Home Distillers and what they like, the spirits that they distill. Like their entire sales pitch on their website was condensed into a paragraph, a whole paragraph on Brown Carbonic that they got from their website about products they offer. And I mean, it is insane. So I've had it create menus. I could go, I'm obsessed with it. So I could go on ChatGPT right now and say, I need a dinner menu for a new restaurant that's going to be modern American fare. It will give me appetizers, salads, soups, entrees, desserts. I could say I need a recipe for each one of those things. It'll give me the recipe. I could say I now need a blog on each one of those recipes. It'll give me a blog on each one of those recipes. All the food recipe blogs I've been putting on Eat Local's website, ChatGPT. Another thing that's crazy.
Oh my God. So what I'm hearing is you just haven't written anything in months.
No, and it's wonderful.
Well, especially you're a new dad.
Right.
You have enough going on. Might as well have the robots write the speeches.
I've told myself I'm going to stop talking so much on podcasts, except for apparently when it's ChatGPT.
No, I'm into it.
Those photos
are all.
It's from it's the same company, OpenAI, but it's their DALL-E platform, which you could type in any descriptive for any picture and it will create a unique picture for you. So like you could type in, I need a photo of a white man in blue jeans and a t-shirt sitting on a beach drinking a coffee, and it will give you 4 different versions of that photo that are completely unique to that prompt, and no one else. It's a unique photo for you. So like the photos of
that's wild.
The photos for those recipe blogs of like
that's actually really
the
wild.
rotisserie chicken. I just put rotisserie chicken cooked at home. Bam. Corned beef and cabbage in a slow cooker. Bam. And I get the photo.
Oh my God. I'm out here. If you ever see product photos of food on the Curtain Nerd website, I'm out here having a panic attack in my own kitchen. I bought one of those like little panel things to like take photos of food. I definitely have Mary. If you've seen her around at the shop, Mary's almost always at my house for dinner. So if there's like grating cheese, it's Mary's hands that are grating the cheese. Like this is like a very in-person, actual
awesome.
lived experience photos for us.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, no, I think I'm going to start doing like webinars or whatever one-on-ones for like restaurant owners who want to learn how to use it, because it really is. It's like this unreal thing, and it's the update that's coming out in a couple weeks, from what I've heard at least. We'll be able to edit videos, we'll be able to edit photos, and we'll be able to code, like type out. Like right now, I could say, I need website code in this script, in this language that can do this, and it'll give me like an example, but also kind of have to fill in the blanks. With this new update, I could say, I want my website in this web language to do this, and it will give me the full code that then I just copy and paste into my website, and I have that feature. Or I could upload this video, and I could say, edit the first 60 seconds and the last 60 seconds out, and it will do that, and then send me the final version. So
That's really.
I know it's absolutely great. So the last thing I'll say about that, and then we'll get back to you and G.
I don't mind. Honestly, this is very interesting information as someone who like is a little more tech unsavvy. I would say this is like things that I would never really even explore on my own because like, look, Matt bought me a shitty laptop because he was like, "Girl, you cannot handle past this," and it's true. I can't. As it is, I still couldn't figure out like where my screenshots were going.
Yeah.
And he looks at me and he's like, "You're so young.
Yeah.
You should be so much smarter with technology."
How old are you two?
We are in 26.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so like we're pretty young.
That's
He's
right.
Like, he's like, and like my dad is like very tech savvy. He was like had the first iPhone. Like he had the first Macs in our house. Like I should be better. I'm just simply not.
That's funny. So is Matt into like all of this kind of stuff?
Yeah, this is like Matt's.
Yeah.
That's his. He's an electrical engineer.
Okay.
So like generally all he does all day.
Yeah.
Is essentially this kind of stuff.
Pretty funny. Yeah. No, it's wild. So the things that with AI moving forward, that people, it's going to be the prompts. So you have to know what to ask it in like specific orders if you want to get the answer.
I mean, isn't that just how Google works also though?
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to like ask Google the right way. I mean, like
Right.
I just having a degree in like the hard sciences, you have to like ask Google like very specific words and then also put like site .edu and then like put in the codes of exactly what you want to get the things you actually want out of any of those sort of systems.
Yeah. It's wild.
Yeah. It's the same way you have to like ask. I have to like ask my Google Homes like correctly how to turn on Spotify.
Yeah.
I can't be like, hey, just play music, because then for some reason it'll always play Pandora, even though I'm pretty sure I've set it as Spotify as the main music for since we started, because I've never used Pandora in my life. But
yeah, I have to say, play this podcast on this platform.
On this platform, yeah. Otherwise, it's like, whoa.
Yeah, right.
Can't access that information.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I promise you can. I pay for the premium subscription. You have access to it.
That's wild. Yeah, so there's websites now where you can buy prompts. So if you say, like, if I want something really specific, people have figured out exactly what prompt you need to ask, and so you can buy those for a couple bucks.
Interesting.
But I think that'll be really, if it's like the knowledge is like, people are trying to perfect their experience and get like the best, output from ChatGPT. It'll be, people will be able to make money from knowing what prompts, how to prompt it and things. But Tim at Buried Acorn, which they like to play a drinking game where they have to take a drink every time I mention them. So if you're playing along, take a drink. He's used it for SEO for his website. So, I mean, that's kind of what I'm doing with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I could say it is outdated, so I could say I've had it write blogs like, hey, give me the best 5 restaurants to go to this weekend in Syracuse, and it still lists Empire Brewing Company.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. So, I don't know if you'll ever be out of a job because of ChatGPT, but in terms of like experts, but I don't know. I think it's pretty fascinating to think of how, small business owners can use it. I think of like SEO work specifically. I've always said SEO work is kind of like, it's not necessarily a scam, but it's like, they're trying to sell you like well, we've got the secret answer.
Yeah.
We can get you a ton of web traffic and grow your business with our $10,000 a month SEO services.
Yeah.
Now you can just use ChatGPT for free.
I've already been functioning on a I can do it for free kind of mentality. We're at the Curd Nerd. We are the most like, if we could just do it, we'll do it to save money.
Yeah.
We're like very set on not going into debt for this business. And like so far, thank God we haven't. It was like our whole goal. We took money from like no one. I mean, my grandparents were like lovingly like, here's a check, thank you. But like they were not like, we want it. They were like, it's your business. This is just because we like you.
So at what point did you, the trip to Europe doesn't happen.
Yeah.
You're here. It's COVID. So at what point do you decide we're going to start a business? Yeah.
We'd been here just about a year. I had tried to work at some other places, and honestly, there just was like nothing even comparable to what I was doing, and I was so passionate about it, and I think Matt could really tell that I was like giving up part of myself by like trying to do these like other jobs adjacent to cheese.
Yeah.
And actually, it was March of 2021. We sat down with Steven Skinner because our dog groomer made a post about how great Steven was and how she was so thankful to have found him as a landlord because she opened up a dog grooming, her own dog grooming place in Eastwood. Okay. And we are obsessed with Amanda. If you have a dog, please go to Amanda's dog grooming. She is the only one who will deal with my absolutely feral corgi. And so Matt came to me and he was like, we should open a cheese shop. And I was like, whoa, that is not in the agenda. Yeah. I was like, that was not even in the 5-year plan. That was in the 20-year plan for us. And he was like, yeah, but like, why couldn't we just do it now when we like kind of have energy and like could make this work? Yeah. Rather than like wait until we don't have the energy or we have kids and it becomes like the lowest priority is to start a new business. Right. And we'd kind of been saving money because we have a 100-year-old home and it needs a new kitchen. And so we'd like kind of been saving up for it, especially because, I mean, Matt was working all through the pandemic and we were not going anywhere. We were just sitting at home, just the two of us. Yeah. And I cook pretty much everything. Okay. So we were just like eating at home, staying home, doing nothing. And he was like, we have this money. Why don't we just take it and open a business? We sat down with Steven. Steven was like, I think this is the coolest idea ever. He was like, this is absolutely what Eastwood needs. And we were like, okay. So I like quit what I was doing. I focused entirely on like getting this business started. And it was a year later, almost to the day of meeting with him, that the shop officially opened. Wow. And now it's almost to the day, 2 years later from crazy. That.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot of questions I want to ask.
I know there's, it's pretty interesting.
What's that like? I mean, what's that like going through that process of, like, I mean, did your dad own his own business doing the upholstery?
So my dad doesn't, but it was his grandfather's business originally. So I do have like some history of business owning, but truly the most basic baseline level. And it was even harder because like I was trying to open something new in Syracuse. Yeah. And while Syracuse is hip and trendy, the governing councils of Syracuse do not understand change. And so I spent a lot of time like calling city officials and being like, hey, I'm trying to open a cheese shop. And they were like, a restaurant. And I was like, no, a cheese shop. And they were like, okay, a deli. And I'm like, still no. And I was like, it's like a grocery store. And they're like, so just a grocery store, you don't prep any food. And I'm like, no. It's sort of in between a deli and a grocery store. And they were like, a deli. And I was like, I am not winning here. And I spent like so much time having to be like, this is something new. We don't really have anything quite like this. We have restaurants that have like cheeses available. We have delis that have cheeses available. We don't have like a designated cheese grocery store that doesn't do any hot cooking. Because all the other ones do some sort of hot catering cooking things on site. We do not do anything like that. We are a completely cold prep business.
I'm assuming they were asking for like, health code, all that kind of stuff and permits. And
yes. And I like came in like fully set. I was like, look, I need to be working through the ag and markets department for what I'm doing. I'm doing like cheese processing. It's not cooking. And even then, like any cooking I would be doing would be considered under ag and markets. Yeah. I'm not doing any I'm not feeding the masses. I mean, we make cheese boards and we cut cheese. And so a lot of it was just like getting the city to get like their mentality right on like the health department was like, no, you absolutely need to work with us also. And I was like, I'm pretty sure you can't be licensed by both. And they were like, no, you need both. And I was like, okay. And so then I got my ag and markets license. I had paid for everything at this point. I'm literally going down. We had put in a grease trap because the city asked for one.
You had to put in a grease trap?
Yes.
For what?
Excellent, wonderful question. I asked the plumbing that. I asked the city that. We asked the health department that. They were all like, you need one. I was like, okay. They were like, is your food greasy? And I was like, no. And they were like, is it dairy products? And I'm like, well, yes, obviously it's dairy. And they were like, so it is by definition greasy. And I'm like, I guess. But then the city came out, put the grease trap in, and then I was like, oh, how often will I need to get this serviced? And they were like, based on what you do, I don't know, maybe once every 10 years. I'm like, why did we Why did we put it in if it's not going to be like a useful thing for my business? Regardless, it had to get put in. The city was like very adamant about it.
That's not cheap.
No, it is not. And it also delayed us opening by like months. We would have been opened in our goal was to be open before Christmas, 2024. one.
Yeah.
And then because of the grease trap, kept getting pushed back, and I had to get in. And I kept calling the city and being like, "Are you sure?"
Yeah.
And they were like, "Yes." Like I was calling 3-4 times a day. They were like, "Yep, you need it." I talked to the plumbing department so many times, and they definitely don't understand what a cheese shop is.
Yeah.
Now they do, because they spend a lot of time at the shop, but they did not. And it like wasn't until March that we actually got to open, because we had to put all of that in. But I'd filled out all my paperwork. I'd already applied with the Ag and Markets Department. They were set to come. I'm going down to the health department because they told me I needed to be double licensed, and they were like, "There's no such thing as being double licensed. If you're licensed through the Ag and Markets, you do not need us." And I was like, "I just want to be very clear. You said something different on the phone."
Yeah.
And I've been doing all this stuff, and I spent all the time filling it out and writing the checks, and they were like, "Yeah, whatever, go home." I got in the car. I started sobbing. I was like, this has been
Wow.
torture.
Syracuse really is not I mean, New York State in general, but Syracuse really is not a great place to be in business,
No.
especially in food.
No. And then, like, once you get into it, like, once you're in it, it's fine.
Yeah.
But, like, actually filling out all this stuff
Yeah.
is like pulling teeth.
You really do need to know someone in politics,
Yeah.
you know, because if you know somebody, I mean, I think back, like that story just makes me think of the Brinewell Eatery, you know, like he was, I mean, it was a shitty location and, you know, whatever, but he had good food, even though I don't think Syracuse, well, I shouldn't say that. Monkey Brains is pretty good, but Jefferson Street sucks to have a business on. But he was dying. And then the entire summer, the city shut down.
Yeah.
You know, like the construction and his entire corridor was just unbearable. And then I think it was even like he announced like, "Hey, this is our last week or two open," and they shut down all of Jefferson Street to traffic.
They really are just like not focused on small business as a city, and it is insane.
Yeah.
Because I do feel we have an insane small business scene here, like in a way that it's more disconnected in like bigger cities like New York City. Like New York City, I worked in small businesses, and you would know all the small businesses on your street.
Yeah.
But then one street over, you wouldn't know those people.
Right.
Because
There's so many.
There's so many, you're only going to know
Yeah.
this small chunk. Here, because like we all sort of have to support each other for any of us to be even remotely functional.
Yeah.
Like I work with small businesses in Auburn and like Camillus and Fayetteville. And like if I can like all work together, it's just going to be a better, like we'll have a better Syracuse. And that's not the same in a lot of other cities.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's connected to, I've been saying it for a couple weeks now. Before the pandemic, there was a great local food scene here in Syracuse. And not just the local food scene, but people that cared about quality food. And I think you are part of like that resurgence of, let me rephrase, there is not a resurgence yet of that. But you're probably like one step in that direction. But before COVID, there was so much more talk about great chefs, great local products from local farms or manufacturers, and great local restaurants. And I just felt like there was more of a focus on those things, and there isn't right now. Like everybody knows Amano and Eden, you know, some of those great ones. St.
Everyone
Urban
does not know those places. I just want to be very clear.
Okay, so
I would say 70% of the people I talk to at the cheese shop do not know those places.
Yes.
Because I get asked a lot where I eat out, because they're like, "Where do you go?"
Yeah.
Because clearly you know good food. And I'm like, "Yes, I do." And I'm like, Eden is my like one of my all-time favorite restaurants. We're going there for our 1-year anniversary of the shop because I like love it there so much. We go for my birthday every year. Like, it's one of my favorite places. I mention it regularly.
Right.
And people are like, "Oh, I don't know that."
Yeah.
And then I like try to explain where it is, and they're like, I never really go over there. And I'm like, "Do you know where like Water Street Bagel is?" And they're like, "Kind of." And I'm like, are we just ignoring this whole other section of downtown?
Yeah, I think that is part of it. In the general like sense of Syracuse, you're right. Not hardly anybody knows about those places. In the sense of like the people that kind of go, like even the consumers are like fans of the food. They're well known.
Oh, they know. Yeah.
But yeah, they're just really, we've lost a lot of that focus on kind of like what should make Central New York. I think we're just far outside. Well, the talk for like since COVID has been cheap. It's like we've shifted to 50-cent wings and, labor and, yada, yada, yada. And yeah, I feel like it might be, I don't know. I go back and forth. I kind of feel like the past year it's felt like a grind. Like every restaurant owner I talked to, nobody was really excited about what they were doing.
Yeah.
Everybody was just like, we're just kind of going through the motions. I'm starting to hear a little bit of excitement from people about like this upcoming year and different things that they've got working, so maybe that's changing. I don't know. But yeah, we don't have a very crazy food scene here in
I also
Syracuse.
feel like though, as a business owner, I like have to make it exciting for me, or
Yes.
I will literally end up in the fetal position by 6 p.m. every night. And so like I will sort of I'll be like, there's no market for this cheese.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna have to find the market. Like I'm just gonna have to make the market and market the hell out of this thing. And
How do you do that? How have you been doing that?
a couple different ways. We're big on social media.
Mm-hmm.
Social media has been like the saving grace of the curd nerd, which is crazy because I'm like from the generation where social media was starting to get like more posed. And so like my like personal social media, I post like twice a year, and it's like, hey, we got engaged, hey, we got married, hey, we opened a business. It's not like, here's me on a Tuesday. And I've had to get very comfortable with that like opposite way of social media where it's like, here's us on a Tuesday with all this new cheese, and like hyping a lot of things up and being like, there's this like thing coming in, you're gonna want to know about it, look out for next week. And people like kind of get this excitement about it.
You're Gen Z, right?
I'm technically a zillennial.
The hell's that?
It's those like 4 years in between the cusp years. We don't kind of fit either way. So I remember when computers were big and dial-up and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah.
I remember all of those sorts of things. But I also grew up like in the land of Blackberries, and I know like Gen Z stuff. But then I talked to most of my employees are Gen Z, like true Gen Z, born in like 2002 and later.
Okay.
And so I was like talking to them, and I will say things, and they will be like, I have no, like, I'll be like AOL. And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I'll be like, what do you mean you don't know? Like, you used to get on AIM and like write messages, and you'd put in a little away note so your crush would message you. And they were like, no, Sarah, that's not a real thing. And I'm like, oh, we're living in different realities.
Yeah.
So like, but I also am not like old enough where I can remember, like, I don't remember Y2K.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like my cousins that are older than me are like, oh, it's this big deal. Like they have vivid memories of it.
I remember New Year's Eve Y2K. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like that's like I know what happened.
Yeah.
And like I've heard stories of like what I was living at that time because I was alive. I
You read about it in a blog that ChatGPT wrote once.
I'm sure. But like I don't like have conscious memories of it.
Right.
And so it's like I'm in this like very weird sort of in between.
I was like, as you were talking, I was wondering, I'm like, oh, maybe you're part of the article. They just said Syracuse is like top 10. Did you see that?
Yes, top 10 for
cities.
Gen Z to move to.
I can't believe that's true.
I think it's crazy because every Gen Z I talk to hates it here. The millennials I talk to love it here.
Yeah.
And so I am like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that's true.
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting when I saw us in the top 10. I was like, that seems odd.
It feels like the same. I don't know if you've ever heard this from different cities, but I feel like I've heard this about multiple cities in America throughout my life, and that is this city is the test market for something. Like people have tried to tell me that about Syracuse. I'm like, Syracuse is not the test market for anything. Syracuse is, they tested it, they launched it. 10 years later, it got to Syracuse.
Yeah.
People have said, oh, test market for fast food and for Pepsi product. I'm like, no, it is not. Trust me, that is not a real thing.
I truly agree with the we're 10 years behind thing. Because that's what bothered me the most, I think, when I moved here.
Yeah.
Because I was like, we are 4 hours from 3 of the most major cities in the world. Like, you could be in Chicago, Philadelphia, Boston, or New York City basically within 4 hours.
Toronto.
Yeah, you could truly be, like, in the, like, mecca of, like, big city living.
Yeah.
And then there's just this, like, insane small point of view from around here where it's, like, I do this thing that I've done my whole life and I don't question it. And even though, like, I know there's better product out there, like, I just settle for what I've been given.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't get why we're settling. And so when we opened, that was my big fear because, like, everyone has kind of given me this opinion like in the year that I moved here, that everyone was just like cool and comfortable with what we had here. And I was like, this business is going to fail.
Yeah.
And I can't care because I have to do this, because if I don't do this, I will be in a very bad place mentally. Yeah. And so I was like, I'm just going to have to keep pushing and do this thing. And if it fails, it fails. It is what it is. And so I was like, and then I opened it, and everyone was like, I have been waiting for this to open for years.
Yeah.
This is all I've ever wanted in Syracuse. And I was like, then why did none of you do it? Like, why did it take me coming here, basically losing my mental health for the better part of a year, and just being like, I mean, pandemic depression plus like new city depression. We didn't know any. We knew one person here. We went to college with one person that like came back to Syracuse. And so like we knew Matt's one engineering friend. Yeah. And so like I ended up hanging out with like 4 engineering bros every day.
Talking about ChatGPT for 25 minutes.
Yes. That's exactly. It would be like we'd sit around, they'd talk about some new tech thing coming out, and then one of them would maybe look over at me and be like, so cheese, huh? And I would be like, I'm going to go upstairs now, and I'm just going to lie down and hope I fall asleep so that this is all over. And like, thankfully I've got a really, really supportive partner, and he like knew I was struggling, which is why we opened and all that kind of good stuff. But I was so worried. I was like, I have no choice. I have to do this. It's like this, or I have to like go home. Like I can't live here. And I'll have to like essentially give up my relationship. And I was like, because like I will either end up in a mental hospital or back in Queens. Like there was kind of no other in between at that point besides opening the shop.
I know that that's an extreme example, but are you like that as a business owner where it's kind of like this and then that? Or like, are you kind of like one extreme or the other? Or are you somewhere in the middle when it comes to like operating the business?
I'm somewhere in the middle when it comes to operating the business. I think that was the most extreme in my life. I truly think it was just like a combination of I never pictured myself moving away from Queens. Yeah. My entire family is still there. Okay. Cousins. Yeah. I mean, since then my brother has moved, but truly I was the first one of my family to move. It was like big talk. Like my aunts would call me and be like, "Are you sure? Yeah. You want to leave?" Like no one has left generationally. So I moved away from this like big family system that I had, and like network of people around me, to somewhere where I had no one essentially besides my partner, which is great. But also when you're just 2 people, it's also like a lot of pressure. We were still like, I mean, we'd been together kind of for years, but we'd only like officially been together not that long when we moved up here. And so we moved here. I had no friends, and I'm like a huge extrovert, like need people in my life kind of person. And I couldn't do what I loved to do, which is like my only outlet. And then I'd go onto forums with other cheesemongers talking about it, and they would be like, this is the worst time it's ever been to be a cheesemonger, because our entire profession is based on like having interpersonal relationships with our customers. And to lose that and not have that anymore is killing us. And so I was just like constantly in this like really dark place for about a year. And then opening the business was obviously like my bright light at the end of the tunnel. And I was like, I have to get to this goal, because like once I get there, I think everything will be okay. And even if it's the most work I've ever done in my life, and even if I never sleep again, I will be happier than this like weird in-between space. Yeah. And then when we did open the business, I was like, I'm just going to take this one day at a time. Like we are just going to get through this. I don't have to be like all consumed. I even look back now and I'm like, those first 3 months of the business were so peaceful. And I was so stressed at the time. Like I was like, that was crazy. Looking back now, I'm like, that was crazy boring compared to what I do now. And I'm like, oh, now that we have like steady customers, and I'm like doing a newsletter, and I'm constantly doing these events and all that stuff. Like the first 3 months I'd show up like 20 minutes before we opened, turn on the sinks, turn on the lights, hang out for the day, serve some people some cheese. And then like at 5:55, I'd start cleaning the slicer, be home by 6:15. Now I'm like, all right, I got to get there at 7:45 in the morning if I want to get all this work done. I'm here until 10 o'clock tonight because I'm teaching an event I'm teaching a class after the shop closes. I like went from like this like crazy, what I thought was crazy at the time, to like now truly being like fully in it. But that was just like a really natural progression. I don't think I like forced any of that to happen. Most of the things we do at the shop are things that were asked to be done. Like the newsletter, I had no intention of ever doing a newsletter. I didn't think anyone would care. Yeah. And now I send out a weekly newsletter to like 2,000 people that almost all of them read it and open it, because you get those analytics as a business owner, which is crazy also, because a lot of those things get deleted. I think the the average open rate is like less than 20% for a
Yeah.
marketing email. I like Googled it when we started because
Yeah.
I was like, if we're not doing more than 20% open rate, then like I'm not gonna keep doing it. I'm not gonna keep paying for the service.
Right.
We get between like 60 and 85% open
Wow.
rate
Yeah.
out of 2,000 emails. I'd say that's pretty good.
That is really good.
And it's every week, and it's a long email. I'm not writing like 2 sentences. It's like here's this fun update. Here's all these new products we got. Here's all these events coming up. Here's some fun facts about Sarah. Like, it's like a long email, and people are actively reading it because you also get to know, like, did they click the link at the bottom?
Yeah. Right.
And they are.
Yeah.
And so, like, none of that was never the goal. Like, I never wanted to be, like, writing this thing. I mean, I love doing it now, but it was because I got so many people that were like, I'm not on social media quick enough. Your stuff sells out. I want to know about it ahead of time. And I'm like, all right, I guess I'll start a newsletter. Like,
Yeah.
sure.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Huh.
The goal was also, like, 2 events a month max.
Yeah.
Originally, when we were like, we'll start events, we'll do, like, 2 a month. We'll see if they do well. And now I'm like, yeah, we do, like, anywhere between 8 and 10 events a month. I, like, don't sleep, and I'm never home anymore.
Man, there's a lot of things I wanted to ask. I mean, it probably wouldn't, like you were saying, like, why didn't anybody else do this? It probably wouldn't. It is surprising that it's worked in Syracuse, and only because Syracuse does feel like a city where good ideas don't work.
Sometimes.
You know, and we are so far behind the times with a lot of stuff. So maybe that's why, you know, it's like worked now, and it wouldn't have worked 6,
Wouldn't have worked if I
7 years
did it a
ago.
couple years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Not that like a cheese shop is some new, brand new example of something. But
it does feel that way here.
yeah, right. And I think that there are a lot of those people. I mean, listen, there were a lot of people that definitely moved to the area from New York City and things like that, and downstate as a result of the pandemic. And so I'm sure it definitely fills that void. There isn't anything like this that exists. I mean, there isn't anything in Skaneateles. I don't think there's anything in Fayetteville. There's nothing in Cazenovia.
There's basically nothing. I drove through all of the neighborhoods when we moved here.
Yeah.
Like, I spent so much time in the car just driving around trying to see if I could see something that maybe sparked my interest. Any one of those little, like, things that could potentially have a cheese counter, I went in.
Yeah.
I checked them out. Like,
Right.
I was looking for them actively. The only other one that I know of that does cut to order cheese the way we do is out in Oneida. It's Cali 1945. They are awesome. Abby Woodcock, the owner over there, is a, like, definite reference tool for me because we kind of both have each other. But we're also far enough away that we're not,
Yeah.
like, competing in the same market. Like,
Right.
it's more like, hey, I'm thinking about bringing this product in. Did you bring it in? How did it work over there? Kind of thing.
Yeah. So, you know, there's so much. Well, how do you balance your relationship with, like, local cheeses versus things that you're importing from Europe?
So the goal for the shop was to highlight as many local cheeses as possible. So I try to work with local cheesemakers first. If I could fill the case with local, I do.
Yeah.
If there's a local version of something I can import, and I think the local version stands up to the imported version, I'm going to bring in the local version. Like, I will hopefully next week be bringing in Harvest Moon, which is a mimolette style from Five Spoke Creamery, which is not quite local, but it is an upstate New York cheese. And so I'm going to bring that in instead of bringing in the French mimolette that I've been importing, because I would rather highlight this awesome New York State cheese.
Yeah.
My goal is really also just domestic generally, like anywhere in the country, because I think a lot of the mentality around cheese is this very Eurocentric view on, like, cheese is great in Europe.
Yeah.
And that is sort of old hat.
Yeah.
Cheese has been absolutely one of the biggest things in the Americas for so long now.
Yeah.
We're competing on a national stage as a country. We've had cheeses win at the World Cheese Awards and all that kind of stuff, which, like, even 15, 20 years ago would have been absolutely unheard of. And now we are, like, competing internationally for cheese. There was actually just the Cheesemonger Invitational, the CMI Masters, just happened to send a cheesemonger team to the Mondial du Fromage in September, which is a big cheesemonger competition in France.
Yeah.
And so, like, we are competing as a country on a national scale for cheese, and so I really wanted to highlight that as much as possible.
Yeah.
And then I kind of cherry pick my imports. I work with importers that I think only do awesome stuff. So the importers that I work with, I know only bring in the highest quality stuff. And then I just want to highlight the things that I think people around here have never had access to.
Yeah.
So I bring in a lot of like true Netherlands Goudas because here we have this like very short-sighted mentality around Gouda of it being like smoked Gouda only. And so I was like, I want to bring these in because I think that they will expand people's palates a little. And then I really wanted to focus on Swiss imports because I think here also a lot of people are like, Swiss cheese is that like sliced kind of white thing with the holes. And so they're like, I don't like Swiss cheese. And I have to be like, does that mean you don't like any cheese from the country of Switzerland? Or you don't like specifically like deli slice Swiss? Because that is not the same thing.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were like, oh, there's more than just deli slice Swiss. And I'm like, well, Switzerland is like one of the largest cheese countries. So like, yeah, kind of. And so I'm like explaining like Alpage cheeses and like how like the Alps works and transhumanists and all that kind of stuff that like doesn't get discussed around here ever. And I think that was my goal with the imports.
Yeah.
And then occasionally I'll just bring in one because I think it's like super cool and I want people to try it.
Yeah. That's wild. All right. So you're coming up on the year. What's the next phase of the Curd Nerd?
The next phase is so many things going on all at once. We are trying to figure out how to like expand our event programming because people are just so into it, and I'm so lucky to have the opportunity to educate about cheese because that's the nerd part of the Curd Nerd. That's like all I want to do all day. So that is our like next big goal is to continue to grow that, and we'd like to try to figure out how to better operate our website so we could do more online ordering stuff because people don't always have time to come hang out with their cheesemonger, or people that have like developed relationships with us already know what they want, and I'd like to be able to give them the platform to be able to be like, hey, Sarah, can you just put aside a quarter pound of this, a half pound of this, and an eighth of this, and I'll come pick it up in 2 hours kind of thing. And then hopefully in the not so distant future, we're working on trying to figure out how to ship cheese. Because that is the big thing people want from us. They want to be able to send their friends and family stuff from here.
That's wild.
Yeah. I was not anticipating that even in my wildest dreams when thinking about opening this shop. That was so far from what I was planning, and kind of working on that shipping realm to do more like virtual classes so people can get online, or they can have their family that from out of town take a cheese class with them via Zoom, and they can like have that experience together.
That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did the cocktail thing go? Because you made like pre-batched,
the cocktail mixers.
Yeah.
They're going great. People seem to really like them. I love the Curd Nerd cocktail mixers. I think that they are such a fun thing. I think we get a lot of people in that are like, hey, I'm making old fashions tonight. What cheese to go with it? And so to kind of give them this like, hey, you could buy this cocktail mixer. It'll say on the bottle already like what cheeses we recommend to go with it.
That's cool.
And then you can just talk to us and be like, hey, I'm going to use this. I'm going to use specifically tequila with this strawberry basil cocktail mixer. Which of these cheeses listed do you think will go best? And sort of helps give us more of a jumping point with our customers, because that is sort of a big question. People will stop in and they'll be like, I was just at Vinomania or the Communion or wherever, and I bought this bottle of whatever. What cheese should I buy to go with it? Or I'm on my way there, I'm going to buy a Beaujolais. Which cheese am I taking home? To enjoy my little wine cheese cocktail night.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I have to ask you one last question. David Anastasio asked me to ask all guests this. David owned Peachtree Sandwich Company.
I loved Peachtree.
I know, they were really good.
Yeah.
So the question he wanted me to ask every guest is, why do you do what you do?
I do what I do because nothing would ever make me as happy. I think anyone who comes into the shop and watches me sell cheese to people would see that. I really think we get a ton of positive reviews about like coming into the shop because they're like the atmosphere and the owners and the staff are all so nice and welcoming. Truly, everyone that works behind the counter like is having a good time and loving it, and that's why I do it. And I do it specifically. This is going to sound creepy. I do it specifically for the moment when someone tries a new cheese for the first time and it's going to be their new favorite cheese. And the look on their face when they put it in their mouth is crazy. And that moment, like to have with another person when they say like, oh, I'd really like cheddar, whatever. And I'm like, hold on. I have this cheese I think you'll love, and it's something they've never tried before, and they just get to like experience this in front of us, and we are like so grateful that people share those kind of emotions with us.
Yeah.
And that's why I do it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Everybody's listening. Check out the Curd Nerd and Eastwood, and check out events and go to the shop and all that fun stuff.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thank you.